And I mean, this is the kind of hypocrisy that I think comes out in the book without you pointing it out, like explicitly by like tapping your teacher's, stick on the chalkboard. But
yeah, learn the lesson, kids.
Yeah, he was a total hypocrite. Like, he was telling everybody to live in this communal way, but he was cashing out his stock every chance he got and living a crazy lifestyle.
Yeah, and there is a level at which I wondered about that hypocrisy and wondered if it was kind of all BS as he was talking about, we want to change the world and make people's lives better. And I came to believe he believed that he did think that WeWork was doing that, that it wasn't just sort of a PR shtick. Adam came to believe that he himself and WeWork as a company were sort of uniquely positioned to solve various kinds of problems. Of course, it does become hypocritical when you're talking about as he and his wife Rebecca Newman did, living an asset light lifestyle, along with having an asset light business. Although in WeWork's case, it was very asset heavy business. There was this hypocrisy that I think weighed on the company once it became clear that they had a $60 million jet and 7 homes and kind of all these instances of excess at the company that didn't totally jive with the message that they were saying publicly.
So at what point do you feel like in telling this story, he got disconnected from the reality of running the business, which was basically a solid, non-technical business, but a good business that could have a decent margin, not a killer margin.
Yep.
But it was an innovative product, certainly. There was demand for it. It was profitable. He had sold the previous version of it. This is all checkboxes on the way. I mean, there was product market fit here, no doubt. There was some level of margin here. And there was obviously things that could be built on top of this, like big companies being involved and community and maybe a network, on the margins could be interesting. Or maybe people could sell into this group of people, or having this, the Frappuccino in every city is the same. The Uber experience in every city is the same. There's some value to that.
Yep.
That anybody who goes to a WeWork in Tokyo or London or New York or San Francisco has the same experience. So those things all added up to me. When did, in your mind, was the disconnect from reality starting?
I think there's sort of 2 points, one that leads up to the next. And the first one gets at the idea you hit it of creating this network. And around 2012, Adam started talking about the company as a physical social network, that we're not a real estate company. We're creating this network of buildings where, they kind of WeWork tried to sort of create what they called a member network. It was sort of a internal proprietary LinkedIn. Of course, the problem was LinkedIn exists. LinkedIn is good for what it is. It wasn't necessarily clear what was the tech aspect that Adam clearly wanted the company to have. What would that actually be? And so that pushed the company into this kind of, they were of the startup world, and then they kind of wanted to be of this Silicon Valley sort of tech boom. And that all sort of led up to this moment where you get to 2016. The company's growing still pretty exceptionally every year over year. Revenue is doubling. They're growing all over the world, but they're running out of money. They're running out of the venture capital. They've tapped everyone from Benchmark in Silicon Valley to a lot of banks in New York to an investor in China. And it's not clear where they're going to go next. And there was kind of a moment where they were thinking of going public in kind of 2016, that they'd at least explored it because they knew they needed more money to continue their expansion. And then SoftBank showed up. Then Masayoshi Son met Adam Newman, and after a half an hour meeting, decided to give him $4 billion to supercharge WeWork's growth. And I think many WeWork employees told to me, looking at that moment, in hindsight, we wish that had never happened, and that sent the company on a trajectory that was unsustainable and kind of enabled some of the worst impulses. I mean, to take a pause for a second, Adam deserves a lot of credit for how big WeWork got. I mean, he and Miguel had this good idea. They pushed it as far as they could. They were ambitious. Eventually, once he had a sort of near limitless supply of money, there was, some problems started to emerge.